says starting. Now it says stop broadcast. That means we're live, guys. That means
Hello.
we have achieved life.
This
We're
is.
fathers, guys.
Oh my gosh, what are we gonna name it? The Fireplace? Because this is
Don't
episode
you
7.
assume here. I'm a mother.
Wait, is it 7 or 8?
8.
Oh shit!
And
Look
I
at me
forgot that
being
Josh is the
incorrect.
mother.
I am always a child.
Oh god.
Oh
Okay.
wow, okay. You know what? That actually does somewhat make sense that he'd be the product.
Okay, this conversation's gone on too long. This is episode 8 of the Fireplace, guys. We're here with Trigger Weasel. I'm Zakem, and this is also Josh because he's just the third musketeer, keeping it real with us, and having his eloquency balance our head assness out. So,
Quite right.
if y'all wanna start us off, man, I'm here.
All right.
We're here. We're out here.
Keeping in tradition, I wanted to start with a funny story.
Fun.
So, how many of you are familiar with Spanish politics?
Not Eyes of the Duck.
Not like Mexico, we're talking like España.
Not Eyes of the Duck. Oh, you mean like Venezuela?
No,
Like Spain.
specifically Spain.
Oh
Spain.
shit. Okay. I think you were talking about like Central America or something.
Yeah, Spaniard politics.
Yeah, I'm hopeless with that. So.
Me either. I'm
funniest-
very ignorant of such things.
All right. So this isn't actually like politics within Spain. This is just politics involving Spain.
Oh, fun.
So, you know what Mexico did?
Did they
So this week, the president of Mexico demanded that the king of Spain issue an official apology for what happened under the Spanish conquest of the New World.
Oh shit.
Well,
I'm not like a history person, so I don't.
so basically what it came down to is you had this great colonization age. Great Britain went over and took like a few areas of like Eastern America and whatnot. You also had the French, which went over and conquested Canada and made colonies there. However, Spain was a part of this, and where Spain went was down to Central America and bits of Western America, and that would of course include Mexico. And so while they were colonizing, Spain was particularly brutal and stringent with their colonies. There was a lot of slavery and hierarchical class systems. There was a lot of inbreeding and disease that was wrought because of Spain, and so a lot of the mestizos of the time, if you will, which were of course these Mexicans, they had suffered and died in very, very poor, brutal conditions simply because Spain sought the gold. They were very much a la Christopher Columbus when they were trying to go for the acquisition of gold and would cut off their hands when they didn't cough up the necessary amount of gold for the day.
Yeah, yeet.
Yeah, so just atrocity after atrocity. So I understand the context in terms of the background.
But nobody who was involved in that is alive, and nobody who had grandparents who was involved in that is alive. But it gets better.
Oh wow, it gets better as well.
Several of the North African Muslim nations have demanded apologies for the Catholics kicking the Muslims out of Spain and brutally murdering those who remained. Which is fucking hilarious to me because that was a response to hundreds of years of Muslims brutally ruling over Spain and oppressing the Catholics.
I feel like
and the Catholics finally fucking
What is what's this culture that we have right now of like restoration? What's it called? Reparations.
Yeah, reparations. This is kind of like involved with reparations, but this is like reparations on an international level. So yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna lead into is
I'm just like this shit is
this conversation about reparations because this is fucking wild.
I wasn't expecting it actually. That's wow. I'm pretty
So yeah, that's somewhat entertaining. So Spain and Mexico now. Okay, so Spain and Mexico, they've got Northern Africa, freaking Northern Africa. Okay, now Spain and Mexico, I can understand since it was just a national basis of the time. It was literally just territory to territory, people to people. It was everyone involved. That still doesn't make it correct It's completely bonkers to assume that they would have to give a formal apology, because not one individual soul in the nation of the world, in fact, was alive during that time. How are they going to take accountability for those atrocities centuries back? They can't. Now, on the subject of the Muslims of northern Africa, not a bad population, by the way. It's a similar idea, except it's religious based now. That's a conflict between religions, not regions anymore. That's between Catholics and Islamic faith. That's not between Spain, France, wherever the McHeckin they were driven out from.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but it kind of harkens back to the issue that we see a lot in Western politics, because there's a lot of Democratic candidates, a surprising amount actually, that are campaigning on the idea of reparations, where all white people would be taxed extra so that black people could be given extra money.
Oh, this again. Yeah, last week's discussion is starting to harken back in our minds.
Well, I think it's funny that we talked about that even though it wasn't a big thing. And now, all of a sudden, the entire state of Mexico is demanding an apology and reparations for what the Spanish Empire did, despite the fact that nobody alive in Spain was involved with the Spanish Empire. And the Muslims, who they kicked out after the Muslims were in Spain for 800 years, tormenting and ruling with like this iron fist. They're also demanding reparations for being booted out of Spain. Like, I think it's crazy that the idea of reparations has become so mainstream a concept that we literally have entire nations demanding reparations from entire other nations for things that nobody alive in that nation has any connection
would be
to.
actually dealing with.
Yeah.
What's your take on it, Alchem? I have an idea on this as well, but what's your take on it first?
To be honest, I'm just going to go with what I've been saying this whole time, and I just feel like these days everybody is just a bitch and doesn't know how to fuck to be productive in modern life, and instead they just want to pussy out and blame everything on their ancestors and expect people around them to fork over the bill, or to foot the bill, so to speak. As we all, realize that everything bad that's happened in history has happened across multiple, different basically story arcs, and it's just a global phenomenon. Like, every fucking nation starts out in one way or another with some kind of hectic, initial situation between multiple different types of people, like different types of people. And if you want to go in and, expect that a bunch of shit's going to change because your ancestors were, fucked over, like, newsflash, all of us have been fucked over if you want to go by, like, genetic memory or whatever the fuck kind of argument you're trying to do. Because, like, history is history, and history fucking sucks. Like, that's that on that. Like, I don't really understand personally what the actual point is of having all these different conversations, because it's literally all the same thing every single time. Modern day, we're a society, we're a culmination of societies if you're talking about the globe as a whole. And if you can't accept that and move forward in a way that can be productive, then you're not being a productive member of modern day society. You're just being a bitch about it. Like, that's pretty much all I had to say on it, to be completely honest. Because it's such a tired conversation. Like, it's such an old mode of trying to make a point about these issues. Like, yes, we fucking know that it's not right to discriminate between, religions and everything, and we sure as shit know that, especially today, we're not about to have it be the norm for people to, run around asking your religion and then fucking cutting your hands off when you turn out to be the opposite, and also, or not the opposite, apart from that person, and then not give your gold. Like that's some archaic shit, and it doesn't apply to modern day society. So it's just so weird.
I hear you, and to be like perfectly honest here, I feel that all of this, it's my idea here is I see it as a dividend of not derivative. It's derivative of something I learned from the art of manipulation, and it's the idea that we try to we try to not only avoid a particular topic, but we try to avoid blame and responsibility through a reversal of sorts. When we're trying to ask for when we're trying to ask for reparations here, it seems like carte blanche. There's not much else really to be said about it. But as you know, but carte blanche refers to the blank check, which in other words means you name your price. It's near limitless in price.
Yeah, yeet.
And it really is carte blanche. It's just okay, pay up. Well, what's the pay up? Like, there's nothing really specific about it. It just comes down to people trying to turn the tables, if you will. And by turning the tables, as Jacob mentioned, they can therefore supersede responsibility. They will not quite recognize things of the past. But that's an issue because these issues, if you will, these problems have already been resolved long before even their birth for the most part. Sure, there are some contention and points of debate to be taken with here, but slavery, done. Catholics and Muslims, they are where they are. That kicking out, that booting, centuries ago. Colonization of Spain into Mexico, done. Like, it's all done. This topic here is not avant-garde by any means necessary. And these people most certainly aren't avant-garde by bringing them up again and saying, oh, well, now's the time for reparations. That's not the point here. The point here is they're not about the money, they're about the punishment. And by throwing out the punishment, those who are punished are therefore in the wrong. They're trying to place and shift blame on some other source rather than themselves and resolution. And just by the shifting of blame, it actually will quell people's anger in a particular area and therefore divert it into a more favorable position.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing with the whole argument, though, is that when you try to back all these people up into some kind of position by falsely, indirectly claiming the position of being avant-garde and having this new idea and being like, why isn't anything changing? Well, it's because we have a past. It's like, that's not a new idea. Like, this shit has already been discussed. We had a civil rights movement. We had this, we had that. And if anything, like, y'all should focus on the actual inner workings of your countries rather than fucking going to whole ass other nations and demanding reparations, because obviously that shit's not gonna work. You're just gonna fucking cause more strife. A. And B, if you actually want things to change, you'll fucking make a new name for yourself as a people. Okay? Like, people who come to the US who are of the Islamic faith, and actually assimilate and claim, stake their claim to a new version of, Muslim identity as not, the typical radical type that apparently the media is, has been promoting or some shit. Like, whatever the fuck the false argument is, these people are actually being people about it. They're doing what they got to do, okay? I'm talking about when they come to America. They come to America, they assimilate, they operate as a proper member of society, they stake their claim to a new fountain of wealth by being completely independent, by working hard, by getting on that grinding, like getting their bread. But like, you can't do that while also victimizing yourself and trapping yourself in a mental state of, I should be provided for because my ancestors got fucked over. Like, all of our ancestors got screwed over. It's not a secret. Like, the history of the world is a dark history. Everything has gone wrong in one way or another. And we're finally at a point in society where we're at a stable enough level to be able to be independent if we choose to. And if you choose not to, then I don't know what to tell you, because you can't get any actual, progress just by being, unhappy with how things have gone thus far in global society, because that's just not how things work.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's really how the world seems to operate nowadays. Now, I would want to say more, but we've got to make some progress here. So let's move on.
Yeah, yeet.
I mean, the next topic I really wanted to talk about, because I find it also fucking hilarious, is a bunch of white people have been posting on Twitter about hashtag my white privilege. And what they're doing is they're posting a story about some outrageous thing that they did that they got away with and saying it's because they're white and putting hashtag white privilege. And most of them are these white females admitting to shit like shoplifting and not being paid attention to, shoplifting, being caught and being given a pat on the back and being told not to do it again. Let's see. Another one, oh, this one's great. This woman was speeding and a cop pulled her over and asked her if she wanted an escort because it was a dark, dangerous neighborhood. And all these people are like scrolling through Twitter looking at the hashtag my white privilege people. I find it amusing that most of them are women and nothing seems to have clicked.
Yeah, it seems as though when people try to, shift an idea into one area, it actually becomes what one would call a false hypothesis. And the idea of the false hypothesis is we connect A to B without realizing that A actually isn't what's affecting B. It's the other way around. It's C affecting B, but because it's odd to explain. But basically, what I mean to say here is the end result of them getting the quote unquote privilege is not beholden to the race; it's beholden to their gender. And America, and it's hard to really deny this. People do sometimes deny this, and I feel that within a social context, I would actually agree with that debate. But within a political context and perhaps the family, I would say it's still contemporary in this regard, but America is patriarchal to an extent. It's not nearly as patriarchal as many of the other countries of the world, but it is still somewhat patriarchal. And because of this, women do actually inversely hold some privilege by virtue of the fact that they have attraction, if you will.
Well, it's also just reading through some of this. This is probably not something Alcom will have any say in because he's not the white people here. But Josh and I can totally both vouch. Like, shoplifting and being caught. If we were caught shoplifting, oh, fuck, would we be in trouble. This one story...
Oh, yeah, no, dude. Like, they will slam you for that. Like, it doesn't matter. They will slam you for that. Viewer beware. I actually knew a kid who got, and he was white, he was whiter than me, man. He was Casper, homie. Ginger, too. Get this. He shoplifted for a Optimus Prime figure, got slammed immediately. Like, the law is the law.
Yeah, and then, like, the stuff that cops, like, the story of the woman speeding and the cop offering to give her an escort because it was late. Like, if Josh or I were speeding, holy fuck.
Oh, yeah, no, if it was speeding, I mean, he looked at that, I mean...
warning if we're, like, sitting there like, I know that I was doing something wrong, but also I know that cops do that for people who aren't white if they genuinely have a look on their face of, I know that what I was doing is wrong, and that's the first time the cop has pulled this person over for doing that. Then again, I do live in a smaller part of San Diego. But also the fucking story of the girl who was walking around. Like, there's this fucking tweet. This girl was walking around late at night, and this cop pulled up to her and it was like, do you want to ride? Because it's late and this is a dangerous neighborhood. Imagine a cop driving up to Josh or I saying that.
Yeah. And it's interpreted as creepy, fishy, suspicious, dangerous even though they're a cop. It's not something that really is coherent when it comes to a male-on-male conversation most of the time. Not unless one of the males happen to be a child. Because to be both female or a child, for better or for worse, has a connotation of vulnerability. So of course the kindly officer is going to offer the girl. He's not going to offer the guy. It's not just attraction. It's just the social norm involved.
I don't know what Malcolm has to say about this, but I'm kind of curious now to hear if he has any thoughts on this shit. I guess he doesn't.
Malcolm has left the chat. All
Clearly.
right.
So
let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah, because now I want to start talking about some actual serious political shit. Starting with creepy Uncle Biden.
Oh, okay.
You hear about that?
No, I have not. Explain.
So Joe Biden, who is running for the presidency, has been slapped with various accounts of sexual misconduct. Which anyone who's seen Joe Biden on TV knows. Because holy fuck, whenever that man is on live TV with a woman, I am scared for that woman because they seem genuinely uncomfortable.
Yeah. I get what you're talking about. There is a lot of tension to it. And when I say tension, I don't mean in the frustration sense. I mean more in the fear and anxiety sense.
And I kind of wish Malcolm was here to talk about this because I think that a lot of this has to do with like a liberal bias because Joe Biden this whole time has been doing all this creepy shit on live TV with women, but the liberal media wants to ignore it because he is the vice president of their Lord and Savior, Barack Obama. And of course, now that he's running against Kamala Harris, all of a sudden he's fair game. And for the people who came out, obviously we know he's been doing it because we've seen him on live TV doing it, and I don't want to insinuate it's that they're doing it for political gain, but I think that someone encouraged them to do it now so that they could get political gain.
Political gain, yeah. It's
because Joe Biden is polling above Kamala Harris for the time being. The people who are polling above Kamala Harris are basically Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders for the Democratic nomination.
Well, hell yeah, Bernie Sanders. But I don't care what they say about him being socialist or whatever. Which, by the way, guys, anyone out there who hears socialist and immediately says devil, reevaluate the understanding of socialism. I'm not going to say that it's the perfect system or that it's even the best system. However, socialism has connotations with the idea of communism and therefore communist Russia and communist China and whatnot. That is not the denotative nature of socialism. Socialism is just a socioeconomic idea and I guess political as well, but it's just this overarching way of organizing the state, so to speak. And when it comes to Bernie Sanders, he might have some socialistic ideals. The main one I remember being his idea of making college free, which, come on, Frederick, you would have to admit that that doesn't sound terrible, mainly because if you make college free for the most part, college becomes much more of a meritocracy at that point. This was a discussion we were having a couple weeks back, I believe. College has to be about one's own passions and merit. You cannot allow for idiotic things such as being outmoded due to a lack of funding. The family you're born in shouldn't impact your ability to further your own education. And yet the fact that it does is just inherently, it inherently abides by this unequal sort of stature.
Well, but in most cases, people don't need to go to college unless you're going into some kind of scientific field that requires that you have a degree in order to properly do that job. You don't actually have to go to college, which I think therein lies the main problem, because we're encouraging everyone to go to college, even if they're just studying literature or gender studies or
Philosophy.
art or philosophy, whatever their main degree is. We have people going into these fields that I don't think should be paid for by the public, because you don't need a degree in that to do that field. You can get along perfectly well in that field, or maybe there isn't even a job field for what you're getting a degree in. Like, yeah, I'm taking a philosophy class, but like, if I were majoring in philosophy, what would I do with a major in philosophy? What jobs are out there because I have a fancy degree saying that I spent 8 years being told how to do philosophy?
Be a professor, I guess.
That's about it.
I mean, at least there's that. Like, if you excel in your degree, you could more or less teach your degree.
Yes,
but then again, that becomes a sort of a permanent cycle of, okay, here's your degree, now it's useless, now you've got to teach the next one so they can get something that's useless unless they teach the next ones. And
yeah,
it's more or less, an excuse my language here, guys, a circle jerk.
Oh, hey, Alcom's back.
I am so sorry, y'all. Oh my fucking god. I had some shit on the stove that I completely forgot about, and a motherfucker almost burned down the house.
So how do you feel about creepy Uncle Biden?
Well...
And the fact that he's being charged with
I wouldn't let him
several cases of sexual misconduct now that he's pulling ahead of Kamala Hairspray and as close to is polling similar numbers to Bernie Sanders in the Democratic nominee.
Oh my fucking god. I don't even, honestly, I don't have any serious thoughts on it, just because of the fact that, like, I'm kind of just accepted that no matter what I hope for in the political sphere, in the fucking, big tech industry, fucking anything, like, there's gonna be some niggas out here who really just need to be put the fuck away. And if he gets put away, then he gets put away. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. Because honestly, the world is fucked up, and there is never going to be any amount of fuckery to the point where the world is going to hit like a cap, Like, there's never going to be a time where it's going to be, like, surprising again. And there's never going to be a time when it's going to be like, okay, we've kind of hit our peak, Let's get this under control. Like, everybody is just fucking disgusting. And I've come to accept that. And personally, I wouldn't let him babysit my kids. And that's that.
All right, then. Mel, let's talk about his 8-year counterpart and their potential involvement with Jussie Smollett.
Oh, Smollett.
Money.
Since it has been officially confirmed that all of Jussie Smollett's charges were dropped after the Obama representatives met with lawyers.
What? Oh, so I was. Oh.
You were correct. I did do some research yesterday. I did find articles. I found a CNN article talking about how the Obama's representative met with the lawyers.
So they're not even trying to hide this shit. They're really just out here waiting for us to just watch everything unfold. That's literally all they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny, dude. When it comes to bringing up the lawyers, someone's like, hey, Biden, you got some dirt in your coat. Okay, let me just hire a lawyer to wash it off. All right, well, there you go. You're absolved. That's really what it is. Oh yeah, we got dirt on this politician. Well, then let them know that so they can just hire a lawyer and wash it all off, because that's just how the political system works.
Goodbye.
Pretty much.
That's dirt. Like I actually have a newfound appreciation for that word, because in more than one, how we interact with this concept of dirt as, just as getting like foul proof on them, is how we interact with dirt itself. It's this thing that, we get dirtied by technically, but it's nothing more than an inconvenience. Not to mention that dirt sometimes is actually this sort of new look. Like anyone and everyone's gonna have dirt on them, because no one can be completely clean, like both in reality and within the political spectrum. And okay, I'm gonna stop there with the analogy of dirt, but seriously,
My name is
lawyers,
Dirt.
yeah, like seriously, these lawyers are it's weird.
Disgusting.
Wait,
I mean, it kind of shows a level of corruption within the system.
A level, bitch. The whole thing is corrupted.
Well, yeah, but it's a certain degree of corruption that I think all of us who are paying attention were aware of.
Oh,
well, the Supreme Court may not be corrupted. I actually have like considerable doubts that the Supreme Court has been really touched.
Well, considering that we haven't seen Ruth Ginsburg for how long?
Who's Ruth Ginsburg?
You know the old lady on the Supreme Court that nobody's seen for like ever?
Oh yeah, isn't she the one that Obama actually elected to be on the Supreme Court?
I think so. And like everyone is sitting here on the internet trying to figure out, like, we haven't seen her for a while. Is she fucking dead? And the Democrats are trying to cover it up.
She might be dead.
Dead?
Now I think about it, yeah, Obama was the one that like brought her up, and that was supposed to be a momentous moment, because this whole idea of putting a woman in the Supreme Court and whatnot, and it was big, but Ruth was an interesting member, because from what I remember, she had a bit of a stance that went entirely against like the liberal point of view. Like she was liberal as she made her way up to the ladder, but the final when she became on the Supreme Court, she suddenly takes a turn, and she started to be very much against a lot of these more liberal ideas. And I wonder,
got up there and on purpose did that so she could like try and remedy the situation, because she knew everything was about to get turned into like.
Well, she was actually fairly consistent, because the it wasn't her that changed; it was the liberal policy that changed. Because she was always like a center leftist, and even when she was in the Supreme Court, she's still. I'm not going to say was, because we still don't know. We just haven't seen her for a while. But like she's still a fairly decent center leftist, not too far to the left, but not quite right.
yeah.
What's happened that makes it seem that way, though, is that the left has gone absolutely fucking nuts.
The leftists we need but don't deserve.
Like, talk about radicalization.
Yeah, no kidding. I like to consider this within the socio-political spectrum, shifting the line. And when you shift the line, the margins remain, but the margins are actually moved within the line. And so we have shifted, lo and behold, to the left a bit more. And so what was a moderate for the liberals, because it's shifted left now, the radical is the new moderate for them. That's simply what it is. And now, because you're shifting the singular line, conservatives, as a result, are becoming more and more moderate, mainly because if you look at this analogy here, they're shifting to left too, but that means moderate. And within the reality, what that goes to show is those of us who are conservative, and I myself don't really associate myself with it. However, I find that anyone who is, or even just someone who is a straight moderate, doesn't have to go to either side, they're off-put by all this. They are extremely dissociated from what the radical liberals have to say about these matters, mainly because they have taken up arms. They have more or less developed a clan, if you will, that is like going off into the political spectrum for battle. And anyone who is not preparing for war, which is literally everyone else, they're off-put when they come in with guns and roses and whatnot. That's a reference, by the way.
Guns and Roses.
And
Are you serious?
I mean, think about it for a second. It's Guns and Roses. That's what the radical liberals are coming in with, and everyone else hasn't brought a gun because they didn't think that they were going to be fighting today, and so that's why I feel that the Supreme Court is actually quite magnificent in its own way. They are all inherently modern for the most part because that's the logical approach. But when it comes to Ruth, being so high up at the Supreme Court, she didn't get shifted to the left. She is still where the margin originally was, which was, just slightly left. That's what it was initially. It's not radicalized anymore.
But I mean, kind of to get back to where we started with this bit, I find it amusing that Jussie Smollett, because every time I hear about this, I'm like, all right, this is the last time we're hearing about this guy. It can't get any fucking worse. And it gets worse every fucking week.
Every fucking time. I hope to God that it's going to be the end. And it's not. There's never an end. And guess what? Guess why? Actually, guess why? Not guess what.
Chicken butt?
No. Well, Obama, so basically.
Damn. Okay. He actually made a nice recovery. Nice recovery, Alcom. I wasn't expecting to use that well.
I am here every night for the next 4 weeks.
But yeah, I could actually imagine people like Jussie Smollett, like news reporters and just everyone who's an investigative journalist, love this dude. They probably go into him on like a daily basis in the morning, be like, hey, so what does my beat have to offer up for that tasty content?
This is true.
I mean, literally, they will go like, and that's the concept for anyone who doesn't recognize in the audience. A beat is actually a term by which news reporters will go to sources of information that constantly have information. The most, basically, the apotheosis of all examples in this regard would be the White House. Every morning they'll go to the White House because there's almost always something the government has to say on a daily basis. That's a beat.
You know what? I want to disagree with you, but all of that was completely factual. And I only want to disagree with you because we fucking took that class together and you literally just fucking quoted everything that he said about beats.
I was like, for a second, I'm like, why the fuck? Like, didn't y'all come to the same conclusion together? Like,
yeah,
are we not all on the same page with this?
Yep, but like, I need to be more technically correct than him.
More technically correct? Well, you are the technical one, Frederick, so you'll have your moments, trust me.
Oof. Big oof.
Oh my, when did y'all start saying that?
The big oof?
Today.
Oh, that was the big oof and the oof is kind of odd because the oof has taken many forms. It was originally 2017 meme based off Roadblock.
Okay. I shouldn't have gotten into.
We didn't need a pop culture lesson today, too, Professor.
How unfortunate. I had 1.5 prepared.
All right, continuing on the discussion about corrupt people. How about that arrest? How about that arrest for Michael Avenatti?
Oh shit! I'm
here we go. Yeah, now that one caught me off guard, dude.
Dude, he brought
the Australian guy, right?
And they're all of a sudden.
No, not the Australian guy. Fuck, I don't remember. I'm trying to remember what Michael Avenatti was involved in.
They brought him on to like fucking to smear Trump like on CNN for the past like 2 or 3 years.
Okay, I knew that he had something to do with being rabidly anti-Trump and being involved in American politics.
What he said, I can't remember specifically what he said, but all I know is CNN brought him on so many, like countless times, and now he's getting supposedly we're expecting LA to try to take him down with some fucking like tax fraud shit. I don't even know.
I mean, this is one of the smaller stories.
It's federal extortion.
Okay.
That.
Yeah, I was reading a New York Times article based on it. It was funny. It said Michael Avenatti's biggest case yet was his own.
Oh,
I just thought that was like that was fire. I love that
Y'all
line.
evil for that. Y'all evil for that.
Mhm.
Oh no.
Yeah, like he did make the bail at least. He did make the bail, but just to have extortion, it's weird because on one hand we have all these people that are trying to investigate and write out the evils and write out the wrong, but they're dirty too. Remember the dirt analogy. Everyone's got dirt. It's impossible to be completely clean.
Dorte.
Mhm.
this is true.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and oh yeah, by the way, he was the guy who he represented Stormy Daniels, in case you're wondering.
Oh,
wait, hold on.
oh shit. This shit keeps getting better.
Is
Oh
Michael
shit.
Avenatti the guy's actual name? Are we talking about creepy porn lawyer?
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
creepy porn
fuck.
lawyer.
We're talking about creepy porn lawyer.
That's him, man. And now he's here for extortion of all things. But everyone's got something,
Oh,
right?
that's
So it's
juicy.
It's so funny how
yeah,
literally it like all at the same time, all of the leftists like the hardcore leftists, like basically they're gods. We're seeing like the crumble of a modern attempt at Greek mythology, and like all of everybody's hypothetical Zeuses and Poseidons and fucking Athenas and everything are all just like coming out and being like, yeah, well, turns out we ain't shit.
yeah. Like it's this idea. Like, what's more powerful, the government, or the law? Which boils down to, is it lawyers or is it politicians? Yeah. Well, guess
All of
what,
the
guys?
above.
Media beats both. The investigative journalists take them all down.
Medium rare, please.
Yeah, media rare. There we go. But it's true though, and I would say that I have no real opinion when it comes to the case itself. I don't know much about the man other than his official participation, so I can't really say for sure whether or not it's true.
Official
But
participation.
what I feel is novel here is the fact that they're trying to take him down, and that there is a lot to be said about this extortion at all. And it just goes to show that because everyone has dirt on them, it's almost as if life itself has a string on everyone, and everyone is a puppet.
Well, it's
But
not
that's
even the fact that they're all puppets. It's the fact that the strings keep them all attached. That's why, with the Jussie Smollett case, as soon as Obama and everything got involved, they were all like, oh shit, we got to shut this down because everybody's attached to each other one way or another by a super, like, you can't fucking keep track of all the strings that are in this like weird system that they all put together. And it's like, if one person goes down, we're all going down. And like literally they're being forced to take each other out one by one in this weird cannibalistic type situation. Because like LA is the home of Hollywood, and that's where a lot of this shit was coming from in the first place. And then all of a sudden, this shit starts going down, downhill, I should say. And all of a sudden everybody's aware that it's been going down in general as of however fucking long it was before that. The Hollywood sphere is like crumbling as we speak, and everybody who has been like placing their bets on it has just been forced into the sudden realization that they're about to fucking see the end of their careers. Jussie Smollett pretty much saw that. I'm hoping that people bring his case back to life in the near future and take him down properly. But just regardless, everybody's attached to each other, and it's been interesting seeing everybody have to come to terms with that because, like, up until now, we've kind of just seen a lot of people get off for this stuff. Like, nobody's really been put in a position where they have to like actually see repercussions for their actions. And finally, we're seeing a few people who have been at the actual forefront of the last 2 to 3 year long sort of anti-campaign against Trump and against everybody else who's not part of the mainstream media, whatever that narrative might encompass. A lot of people are starting to realize that Trump isn't at the epicenter of this conversation, and he hasn't been since the beginning. It's just this big, like you said, this puppet show where everybody's attached to each other by strings, And the second somebody fucks up, the whole show just starts to crumble, and it's in the middle of crumbling right now. And it's very both exciting and satisfying. It's an odd mixture of emotions that I'm feeling at this time.
And one thing that I do wonder, we are all interconnected by the quote unquote strings here.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, however, if there have been strings falsely attached. If some string,
I'm interested in too.
yeah, like the fabrication.
But I wanted to hear what you had to say.
Yeah, and thank you for that. But I feel that there are actually fabricated stories and whatnot, and by right, and by presenting this foul string, if you will, to be cut, people go haywire and cut off all the strings on this particular person. They will destroy much of their career, if not all of it, in one swoop. Yeah. And what I take from it here is, rather than strings that connect all of us, there's also puppeteers. They will grasp hold of our strings and take them hostage and cut them as they see fit, just because it is unadvantageous to leave it going. And so as a result, I have to wonder about how many people have had their lines cut simply because they weren't favorable at that point in time. And there have been some cases. One of the fun stories that we had a few weeks back was about Vic Moniaga and whatnot. He's a very good example of this. The man has no political participation whatsoever, nor is he really big within an economic aspect. It's somewhat social, you could say, but that's within niche groups at that. However, he was being arbitrarily taken down by all these different expos and all these different companies and whatnot that didn't want to use him for voice acting at that point. Mm-hmm. However, what it came out to be was, it wasn't the expos and the companies that cut him out. It was them cutting him out because of his solid reputation. And so the true puppeteer behind all this, the true master plotter, ended up being a couple of rival voice actors that didn't like him taking all the lead roles. Chris Sabat being the main one here. They orchestrated all of it so that his career would be taken down. And so to bring it back to their analogy here, to tie it all together, you like that? They took hold. They saw his strings as his weakness. They took hold of them and tried to cut him down. But now he's actually fighting back and trying to repair the strings.
Yep.
You're pretty much on point. Listen, I didn't even know about that situation, but it completely ties in with what I was saying earlier and what I was going to go along in regard to my thought process. But you hit the nail on the head, my guy. So
that does kind of tie into Russia collusion. And how, by the way, it was BS.
What? I don't even know what
the Russia collusion.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Like, obviously. But I mean, the reports being out, and there's the reports being out for a while, but there were some hilarious reactions of people still clinging on to this insistence that Trump is still guilty.
But Trump's a Russia colluder. But Trump is, but Trump, like, no.
Fucking Bill Maher be like, I don't need a report to know that Trump is a traitor. I have a TV. Have you seen the fucking meme with, like, the NPC? I hate Trump because my TV told me to.
I'm gone. Goodbye.
Like,
but who's Bill Maher?
One of the late night talk show hosts.
Oh, see that dude that was yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. Never mind.
Yeah. And honestly, what I think all of this shows is like Jayford and I actually Friday night were having a conversation about this. No, it was yesterday morning technically, because it was like 2 or 3 in the fucking morning.
Yeah, we were up for a while.
We were.
And
we were enjoying our time.
We were talking about how fucking real Trump derangement syndrome is.
Honestly.
Like, holy shit.
It's actually, like, it's worrisome at times, because some people will, like, literally eliminate entire, like, meaningful relationships that they forged over, like half a decade in some cases. And it's like
more than a decade.
Exactly, like half a decade in like some cases, and like in a lot of cases it's legitimate, like friendships, like, are you okay type friendships, like, why are you fucking reacting in this way, I'm worried about you type friendships. That's like happening all over a lot. and
Yeah.
and on top of that, like, other people, like, in other situations, like, people are completely, like, in professional settings, losing their shit and going off the deep end on people who they have no business getting into that type of energy with them, and it's like, if you're trying to be like that, then I'm genuinely worried about you and I'm praying for you. But also, bitch, open your fucking eyes, because if you don't, and you don't, figure out how to actually sort through facts and everything within a a reasonable time frame, then you're gonna probably see some sad times in your near future, because that's not how the fucking real world works.
Mm. Yeah, it's funny. This this idea of the Trump derangement syndrome. I agree with Trump and derangement, but the whole syndrome aspect, I find it all to be just a farce that relates back to society
I
in general,
mean,
how we
it's
like to
part
place
of
things,
the
Well,
it's kind
actually,
of an extension of the whole joke that liberalism is a mental disorder, because a lot
Mhm.
of people from, and I don't think it's like an actual thing that liberals are mentally incapable of attaching to reality. What I think it is it's have both of you heard of the concept of willful ignorance?
yes, that.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
of course.
I feel like that's what is the driving force behind, the idea that liberalism is a mental disorder, is willful ignorance. They don't want to see things that make their side look bad, but it's also what's behind Trump derangement syndrome, because everybody was told throughout the entirety of 2016 there's not a chance that Trump is going to win.
Yeah.
Trump is a joke. Trump can't win. Trump is awful. Our golden, perfect, absolute angel Hillary Clinton is going to be the next president.
Our
And because
savior.
it didn't happen, people don't want to register with reality. And so I think Trump derangement syndrome is a result of the fact that half of the country was told that there was an absolute certainty they were going to win, and then they didn't.
And then
It's a
Yeah,
result of the
I
fact that half the country has basically been given everything that they wanted from a political angle for over 8 years,
yeah,
and they suddenly lost. And I think that that's the driving force behind it. And I think that's why we see people who have this concept that even though no Russian collusion has been found and Trump has been put under constant investigation, and there's still nothing concrete enough
they even
that
spied
anyone
on
is
his
willing to
ass. Like,
touch
what the
him with a
fuck?
9 foot legal pole. Nobody's willing to go after him with legal charges because there's nothing
There's
strong
nothing
enough against
there.
him.
It's not that they're
But
not willing.
even
It's that
though that's the
they don't have the will
case,
to do it.
you still have people insisting that old charges are still valid because Trump totally did them. And I think that the willful ignorance surrounding that is a result of the fact that, and I don't want to go on the whole, oh, millennial train, we're millennials, but we do have a generation of people who have been told their entire lives that being liberal is morally righteous and nothing could ever go against the liberal train. And they grew
Exactly.
up in a society where Obama was president for 8 years and liberalism completely dominated the world. And now all of a sudden, their morally righteous crusade that they've been told is perfect is being challenged because it's not perfect, which
Yeah.
is resulting in this willful ignorance where people don't want to admit they've been brainwashed. People don't want to admit they've been living in a lie created by their parents and by their teachers and by everyone who helped raise them.
Yeah.
Yeah, their socio-political centricity is really annoying, man. To be honest, it's something that I feel has become more urbane in modern day. And this,
Look at me putting my
there.
psychology classes to use.
It's
Oh
almost
no, that one,
in
that
my
one was
head. It's almost kind of like
that.
fashion. Like, if you don't wear the right shoes, if you don't wear this, if you don't wear that, then we're gonna bully you and we're gonna make fun of you. But because it's political and it's like a larger scale type thing, it's kind of associated with this like weird. half-baked elements of human psychology that we really don't understand. And for me, the fact that everything has been happening for so often on TV, mainstream media, and then has moved even past that to be all over the internet too, where those areas haven't been checked. People legitimately, like, this is how some people who deal with like paranoid schizophrenia and stuff end up having breaks because of what they see on the TV, because they think that some shit's about to go down that nobody else sees, and they're like, they're the ones hearing the radio and everything, and then all of a sudden they see all this crazy shit happening on TV, and it's like there's an element. There's an element of mania in all this, and it's legitimate, and that's why it's kind of worked calling it Trump derangement syndrome, because there are moderates who can have actual conversations about it and just get mad and everything, but then there are people who literally have been turned into memes, who fucking are kneeling at the time of him being sworn in and everything, or confirmed, who are just screaming their lungs out, fucking blowing their voices out, because Trump's about to fucking end the world. And it's like, that's not reality, and I'm
Oh yeah, it's totally not reality.
but it's kind of scary, because there's a little element of actual mania there.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, and I will, although I do argue still that it's not really a syndrome, this idea of Trump, like I'm just going to call it the Trump syndrome, but this is a phenomenon. And this phenomenon, regardless, does create pandemonium within society, I feel. And it's more predicated on two elements. It's predicated on political centricity and confirmation bias. And them combined makes this fragile reality, this reality that is basically the stockholder of everyone's desperate cry for what they believe to be right. However, what they believe to be right is within the subjective scale, whereas reality itself is by default the objective scale. It simply plays out as nature intended, more or less. And as a result, people have this feeble notion of reality shattered. And it's the backdrop that's at play here with the confirmation bias again, which, for anyone who doesn't know, confirmation bias, just for me, it's what Trigger Weasel mentioned before, which is people only listen to what will substantiate their stance. Any opposing argument is conveniently left forgotten. And to relate it back to the modern time here, they are trying to hold on to their sense of right and morality, their sense of how the world should be governed and how society should play out its path in existence. However, what they believe isn't the current reality. They are having somewhat like what an addiction is having. They're having withdrawal syndromes from what the government used to be. they're having a hard time to develop against with the addiction idea. They're having a hard time building a tolerance to Trump. And it's backwards thinking on two elements. One is actually this hypothesis, and this idea that it's addiction and a syndrome. I vehemently will argue that such an idea is absurd, but I would also like to mention that what we are actually seeing in play here is a communicative dysfunction. What we're seeing here, for better or for worse, is that the sides are trying to rely on themselves and are having difficulty understanding what the frustration is coming from. The liberals are getting overly excited right now, and they wanted to get against the Russian inclusion. However, this was just them trying to attack at Trump. This was them just trying to get their swing in. But when you look at it from the conservative point of view, it was just another example of a weak reality that didn't ever exist. But they don't understand for what it is. It's no longer an issue. It was merely an attack. However, it's hard to really understand why the attack is there unless you try to understand the attacker itself. if we were to just come together, and now this is me just speaking in, optimistic ideals here, but if we were to ever come together and try to understand each other and actually have open communication and participation, looking at you, radical liberals, not even allowing for participation, gosh dang, but we would come to understand that what the liberals wanted and what the conservatives wanted could actually find a moderation. The shifting the line concept I brought up earlier would be right back to the center, be right back to how it was originally intended. We are off balance as a society, and I'm just going on and rambling, and I want to
what you're saying makes sense though. As much as I want to say that we could understand each other if that happened, unfortunately, what I find is the sad reality that I often experience the fact that right-wing people are often much more open to talking about their political ideas and trying to have an open political discussion with their direct opponents than left-wing people. And so, I mean, I don't think that it's just a right-left dichotomy. Obviously, there are some things right-wing people need to just accept. We need to I'm not going to say we because I'm not really a Republican, but Republicans need to accept that not everything falls under their concept of liberty.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're much more open to having those ideas challenged than liberals.
Yeah, because a lot of the time with the potential challenge there, it's mostly reliant upon fact and statistical data, which again you can't really argue with unless you are dealing with some kind of like willful ignorance situation. So if you are a conservative and you decide to have a conversation with somebody, not like a lot of the time, the people who are going to be more up for legitimate debate instead of going in to have a conversation and then to get mad when they don't like what the other person has to say, like usually that's going to be a right-wing person. Not to say that there aren't centrist leftist people who are able to be on the more even keel and to really have a legitimate conversation about this stuff, but so far from what we've seen, the liberal media has shown a lot of liberals who make it basically fashionable, like I said earlier, to be the epitome of that angry non-listening person who just has their point and wants to tear the other person to shreds. But like you can't really do that in an actual day-to-day discussion because this isn't just TV. Like life isn't a production.
Now, talking about angry people who aren't open to other points of view and who want to tear their opponent down.
Oof.
Let's talk about AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's response to the Green New Deal being voted down with 0 votes in favor.
Now, Trigger, you begun.
This is true. This is true.
I don't even know what.
Because right after the vote, she went on this incredibly moralistic rant about the evil of the elitists and how it's not an elitist issue to want climate change.
What the fuck? What the fuck?
And talking about, like, she went on this whole moralistic rant about how she was
Do you hear this?
She was bartending and serving coffee a year ago, as if that was a reason why people should fucking vote for the Green New Deal. Like, her whole argument was substantiated around, oh, look at me, look at poor me, I'm being harassed. Oh, look at poor me, I came from poor background, poor me. Like that's a fucking reason to vote. Like, imagine any other politician trying to justify their legislature by saying, oh yeah, I used to serve alcohol at bars, I used to wait tables. And so you should vote for my measure to, I don't know, brand all the Mexicans with tacos on their faces. Just burn it in there with a hot iron. Imagine someone trying to say some shit like that, and obviously I went with a fucked up thing that no one would agree with. Obviously.
Well,
No,
almost
but
nobody.
imagine someone trying... Okay, there's probably some fuckhead out there who's like, yeah, wait, that's a great idea. I don't care about you. But imagine if somebody... I really don't care about whoever the fuck agrees with that. But imagine if some other politician, any other politician, tried to do that. Like, imagine if Trump was waiting tables right before he was president. He was just a busboy. And imagine if he sat there and went, we need to build the border wall because a year ago I was waiting tables. You wouldn't tolerate that shit.
No,
So why the
no,
fuck are
sir.
all these liberals posting this video as if what AOC is saying is some infinite moral wisdom about why we should pass green legislation? And then on top of that, when she was asked by the news media about how she felt, I mean, this is more of the, oh, look at her, she's so stupid, but she genuinely fucking responded to the question, how do you feel about the fact that the Green New Deal didn't get passed? She deadass said, deadass, she said, JFK didn't abolish slavery on his first try either.
You know what?
That is an actual
cute.
fucking quote from her now.
Sorry, but she just does. She be saying the stupidest shit sometimes. Oh my fucking god!
Like, there's a reason. Like, there's a reason that she's the laughing stock of the Republicans. That is why.
That. You're messing with me. I didn't actually hear her speech.
No, that wasn't part of her speech. She was tailed by a news reporter who asked her a question, and the news reporter caught her on camera saying that, and that video is being fucking shared.
Oh my god!
Like, it wasn't part of her speech, but she fucking said that shit. Like, damn.
Y'all really...
That's cute. You know what? That's just adorable.
That's cute, he says.
I mean, to be fair, this is the same woman who said that the three chambers of government were Congress, the Senate, and the courts.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So obviously we're talking about someone who has no idea how the government works in the first place.
I mean, okay. That's a good one.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I know I shouldn't be laughing, but that is a bit entertaining. I must say.
Laugh at the stupid.
Yeah,
it's
like
hilarious.
I didn't expect to legitimately laugh at this shit. I was prepared. Not gonna lie.
I did not expect that either.
Like, laugh, but oh god. Oh, Alex, you shit. You really. Wow.
Alejandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And by the way, when I say that because, like, have y'all noticed that every news reporter seems to be in, like, this competition to pronounce her name the most, like, super stereotypically Spanish ethnically, however you say that. Like, they're trying to say it in the most stereotypical Spanish voice because they want...
stereotypically Hispanic way, yeah.
Yeah. Every liberal news reporter, and it's fucking hilarious.
I love how Steven does the subtle jab.
Oh, Chowder?
Yeah.
Ladder with Chowder, I love that show.
You take the moon and you take the sun. You take everything.
By the way, that was a joke.
All up and then you're done. And then you get politics.
Oh my god. You know what else was fucking hilarious? It's not on our list of topics, but I fucking, I found this video.
Fun.
Of I think it was, no, it wasn't CNN. It was one of the other really liberal news anchors though, and he was doing a story on what is it called? Gentrification. Is that when rich white people move into poor neighborhoods?
I don't fucking know anymore. I don't even like. There's so many
But like,
fucking made up terms for like
it was
bullshit
this
where they
story
try
about
to be a racial.
when rich white people. That's the narrative is that rich white people move into poor neighborhoods and drive up the prices. I think it's called gentrification.
Oh
I
my
dug up this fucking video, and this guy sat there and was talking about how awful it is that these white people are moving into neighborhoods and driving up the prices. But when he talks about minorities and how the communities are full of poor minorities, he
Uh-huh.
doesn't say something like minority communities or majority minority communities.
It's poor
No,
black people.
no, he uses the term minority infested.
Oh my fucking god, are you serious?
Dang, dude.
You
That's
had it going, man. I was
lovely.
hoping that you would like say some dumb shit so I
And
could
I'm
just
like,
laugh. But
damn.
honestly, that's just such a fucking
Like, damn,
fail.
you just let the liberal opinion accidentally slip out.
You just took the biggest L for the liberals of all fucking time.
The biggest L. Not just kind of an L. It's the biggest one.
It's literally the biggest.
Obviously.
Like every time that they actually, genuinely let that internal narrative of like what they're thinking that the other side thinks about all these communities, like you're exposing your game. Like every fucking time you do that, you screw up even more, and it's crazy how they never learn. Like if you are gonna be saying this shit, you need to get some media training. If Nickelodeon can fucking sit Miranda Cosgrove down and have some people in there to identify all of her little nervous tics, I think you can fucking get backstage or whatever the fuck for an interview, go through some media exercises to make sure you don't slip up, and fucking have an actual like if you're gonna tell a story, like my mom and I have both done this for like we're both pretty good with kids, and it's like, listen, if you're gonna lie to me, make sure the story's good, because I don't want to sit here through a lie and immediately know that you're lying. So make it good, boy, because I'm not.
Yum yum.
I don't have the patience.
Yeah,
All
make
right.
it a good one.
So now I have a couple more stories I want to talk about, and we're going to be leaving the U.S.
Oh, fine.
Oh, again?
I
Okay.
love
So-
marketing.
So, do either of you remember when I was talking to you about Article 13?
Yeah, slightly, but also I'm a dumbass, so recap.
So basically, Article 13 increases internet, not censorship, but like not directly. It doesn't directly increase censorship, but what it
I know what you're talking about.
what it does is it increases copyright restrictions, because there is a U.S. law, and it's the only law It's the only law for a while that has existed on this topic, which basically says that any copyright restrictions posted on a platform are not the responsibility of the platform, but instead the responsibility of the person who posted them. What Article 13 does is it increases copyright restrictions so that you cannot even use images for like parody or educational purposes, but it also states that the platform itself is responsible for any copyright infringements, which means that if I were to post onto YouTube a video and it contained, let's say, 5 seconds of a SpongeBob episode,
which you have never seen in your life, so don't even fucking use that.
let's just say though, it contains like 5 seconds of a SpongeBob episode,
I'm suing you.
and that means that according to the Article 13, which is a European Union law, YouTube would be responsible for the lawsuits involved. The problem with this is it's an international law, which means that internet company, or these companies are international companies, which means that even though it's a national law, the companies have to enforce these on an international level.
That doesn't make any sense.
basically, if YouTube and Facebook want to stay protected, then they have to censor all of it because they cannot. There's no way to just censor that content in the European Union. You have to have an algorithm that just hacks at all of it. So basically, it's being called the meme ban because effectively what this does too is it bans memes. Because most memes use copyrighted content. Now,
I'm gonna cry.
the reason that I'm... Do you have the basic understanding down, though, of what Article 13 is supposed to do?
Yeah, as soon as you started talking about
Article 13 has officially passed.
Oh shit!
It has been officially voted and signed into law. It is no longer a looming threat that might be voted into law. It is officially signed into law. This shit is officially law and officially affects all of us. And now the social media websites are going to have to figure out what to do.
Well, holy crap, on a stick. That's pretty bad, guys. I'm just saying.
Like, I don't want to be apocalyptic because the internet has seen some shit. But if not handled properly, this could be internet ending.
Oh yeah, dude.
Damn.
Without a doubt.
Because that means that YouTube can't allow anyone... YouTube suddenly has a decision that it has to make where it can choose to try and take those lawsuits, or it can only allow people who they can be absolutely certain own the rights to their content post content. Now, for context, that means that most people who would be able to post to YouTube are large corporations, which kind of defeats the point of YouTube. But it also means channels like ours that, with what we do, you'll notice that Joshua has a fucking picture of Colonel Sanders that would technically fall under the guise of Article 13.
That's fucked.
Yeah, that really is.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
what the fuck? Wait.
And the fact that the European Union not only passed, that was very eloquent, but the fact that the EU passed this, European Union, the fact that the EU passed this, and nobody in the US seems to be, no politicians in the US seem to be trying to challenge this, is absolutely insane to me.
They're dealing with their shit with like Brexit and everything. Like they probably just don't want to get into their bullshit because it's bullshit.
Well, yeah, but the fact, like I said, this is an international thing. It may seem like a national law because it is, but because internet companies are international, they have to abide by the laws and regulations of the strictest country that they exist in.
What the fuck, man? This is so weird.
The only reason that we don't have to abide by Chinese regulations is because China censors everything themselves. But the EU has stated that internet companies are going to have to do all of the work.
That sucks because that means that they can directly infringe upon companies like, you know, thereafter. If they happen to be somehow affiliated with the internet, then they can go in and do some shit to them depending on what they want to do after this. Because it's once they took this step, like there's no, like, you can't really just tell if there's an end point, because up until now we didn't even know that this was going to be a starting point, and then all of a sudden this shit's passed and nobody's talking about it. And like I already knew about it, but I kind of put it out of my head because I just didn't want to deal with it. But dude, this is weird. This is fucking weird.
And yeah, dude. I can be hopeful and say that it won't affect us too much. It'll just be another occasional restriction. But that's still restriction on internet free speech. That's still restriction on the ability of small content creators to create their own content and put it out to the world. Yeah. It's still a restriction on even people who want to meme.
Yeah, literally, like, if you want to use a 10-second clip for a meme, then you get fucking sued out of nowhere. And then what?
And the question that I saw posted about this, too, does this apply to GIFs? Because GIFs are, like, small clips from mostly copyrighted content. does that mean that GIFs would be illegal and I wouldn't be able to comment those anymore?
I'm actually thinking, yeah.
Really too weird. Like, this 1984 shit needs to stop.
And I don't think the people who voted for this actually know what they're talking about and actually know what they're doing to the internet.
It's a Marie Antoinette all over again.
Well, because y'all see the video where Count Dankula and
Count Dankula
visited the UK or visited the EU to talk about how Article 13 would affect the internet, and it was a bunch of fucking crusty old men who were talking as if they never used the internet in their fucking lives. Like, these was a bunch of ancient people who had barely an understanding of the internet legislating on this level.
Marie Antoinette all over again.
Yeah.
Just say.
And I mean, I just find it ridiculous on a personal level that anyone could think that this type of legislation is a sane idea. I mean,
don't know how did this start? Because, like,
this started as a proposal in the EU Parliament. I forget who proposed it, but the EU Parliament loved the idea.
I have a question. I have a side question.
Yeah.
Is the U.S. government a parliamentary system?
No.
Like,
technically, because any Senate is technically a parliamentary type of system, but I think the main difference between a parliamentary type of system and a senatorial type of system is the level of control that they are afforded, because in a parliamentary system, a single parliament has all of the power to make decisions, as where in our senatorial system, the Senate gets to make choices, but then there are checks and balances.
So the U.S. is actually a parliamentary senatorial system, and it's kind of a.
I mean, when you get to questions of system, it gets a little blurry. But
I'm just curious.
Generally, the difference between a parliament and a Senate kind of system is that if it's a senatorial system, there are checks and balances, making sure that the Senate doesn't have complete power. And in a parliamentary system, that single group of people basically holds all the power.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
For a second, when you said U.S., I thought you were going to ask if the U.S. was a part of the EU, and I'm like, no, we're not a part of the European Union.
Listen, I'm not that.
Thank God.
I'm not that geographically literate. Okay, like, cut me some slack, man. I'm not that fucking like.
Yeah, let's not be too harsh with them. I mean, come on. That's an honest to God mistake.
This is true.
Shit, man.
Now, kind of to finish this off, have either of... I know that Jayford Alcom...
Fucking, I don't care.
I don't care anymore.
Our names have been revealed by now, guys. Let's be honest. Anyone who's been keeping track would know.
I think people have seen video of me too, but there is a political activist in Australia. He's a Jewish convert. He used to be Muslim, named Avenatti. And he's an infamous right-wing activist. And he went on to a news show. And this news show has been accused in the past of editing their conversations with their guests.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. And this person, and Avi actually had the foresight to record his conversation by turning on his camera phone and putting his phone in his pocket during the interview. And what happened is, when the interview got released, they edited the video to make this guy sound like he was saying that Muslims are animals. And of course,
here we go, fabricated.
And of course, Avi posted the whole interview that he captured through voice recording on the internet.
Wow.
And of course, say that. And the interviewer came out. He didn't apologize. He came out and said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you." Basically, like it
You
wasn't
lied?
an apology. It wasn't a "we made a mistake and we're sorry." It was more of a "fuck off." We do what we want.
Yeah, it's honestly like
And
at this
like if
point,
there
it's
wasn't
not what
enough,
they claimed it to be anymore. It's not interviewing or anything. It's not. It doesn't even matter if it's that specific business. It's just in general. The
and
Hollywood
also if there wasn't
has
enough
let
proof
out
already that
the
fake
carpet.
news is a thing, because I know all three of us, when we talk about fake news, have been told that we're fucking insane.
Exactly, but this shit is not like
Like
it's
it's
not.
not fake, and fake news, I think, is just the concept that news outlets and news anchors don't want to tell you the news. They want to tell you a story and a narrative to make you more zealous towards their side of the aisle. So they take stories and they twist them to fit the narrative they want to push. And I think we see that perfectly represented here, where this left-wing where this right-wing activist was being interviewed by a left-wing anchor, and they edited the interview to have the right-wing activist saying that Muslims are animals.
I'm just wow, wow.
Yeah. Jesus, dude. That's just
And I find
blatant
it
at
crazy
that
that
point.
that's the kind of world we actually live in now. Where when something like this happens, the question isn't how bad are we going to prosecute this person who has been caught in the act, officially caught in the act of essentially creating libel
That's fucking
and using
And
it to misinform the public.
that's
No, the
fucking.
and is indeed
conversation is
libel.
did it really happen? I think you're lying. I don't think the camera's lying, obviously. Avi
Yeah, because the camera
edited
can do
that
that.
clip.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, that's the conversation we're having, is whether or not this person actually was caught doing this and whether or not it matters. That's the conversation we're having, instead of how badly do we want to discourage news anchors from knowingly publishing libel. And this is libel.
I don't even know what the fuck libel
It's
is.
libel. Like, it's simple
Libel
as
is
that. There's
when you
nothing you can do.
libel is when you lie about someone to
Yeah, but
tarnish their image, and generally it's applied to news outlets which have a large spread influence.
yeah. But my thing is, the reason why I'm curious, is because if you're looking at that like as a technical term, is it libel specifically to do this to a person, or is it some other thing that's more like insidious? Because like,
Well, it's either libel or slander, both of which are very similar terms, and both
but
of which are
it's not
technically
either one.
punishable by law. In
What is
the
slander?
slander, like libel, is when you completely misrepresent what is happening, and you lie about an individual's actions. Like,
Well, I feel like
libel
it
is
should
when
be
you
a
lie
different
about
term.
someone's words.
I feel like there
Slander
should
is
be
when you
different
lie about
alignment
someone's
upon
actions
this.
to
Oh,
make to spin a false narrative. And those are legally
yo, okay, hear me
recognized
out.
as
Can you
crimes.
guys hear me out for a second? I have a thing that I want to go on real quick, just like a little
Okay.
slight tangent about the law
Yeah.
and the internet. It connects back to the Article 13 thing. So my theory is that humans for a long time have been network beings. You know, we are. Uh, Trigger and I have already talked about this. We actually talked about it, I think, at that little 2 a.m. session that we had, where we were talking about a lot of different philosophical stuff. And my like life understanding that I've always kind of kept on me, like subtly just in my head, was that people are like network beings, and the reason why the government is structured out so checked and balanced across so many different levels is because people know, as we continue to expand the laws and everything, and come upon new technology and all that, we're gonna be adding stuff, and that's why we have amendments. That's why we have constitutional amendments that literally apply nationwide, and why the power needs to be away from the federal government, and why stuff like Article 13 is so powerful and yet so dangerous to the general public, because people who aren't actually uh, in a position to be able to be part of the mass population don't really have that ability to connect in that networked manner to the people that they're going to be directly affecting with their decisions to install overarching power that basically oversees everything that we do in that specific area. And the internet is a really, really gray area when it comes to law and stuff, because a lot of it is still effective to each other in that networked manner, because we have such close influence to it. They've done studies. We get that dopamine rush. We get that sense of satisfaction and potential loss of um, productive gratification when it comes to going online and having all these experiences online, as opposed to being in real life, as we were when the Constitution itself was properly uh, rolled out. The red carpet was rolled out, and everything got put into place. We stuck our claim to the U.S., and we made it the land of the free, with all these different amendments and everything, directly affecting the people outside of the power that the Constitution explicitly states is within the states. So my question is, that being, with all that being said, is there room to make amendments now that could possibly be used to protect the people of the internet who have conversations, and can we specifically go into an engineering headspace and try to think about it from the standpoint of people who actually handle where the information is stored, where its servers are based. If Facebook has all their servers in the U.S., does the international water rule not apply to Facebook as a company as a whole? And would Facebook then see a way out of the political ideology, pseudo monopoly that the Silicon Valley / Hollywood sphere has created? And after that, potentially was put through, would it be conducive to a positive change globally, since we would, amongst all this Brexit stuff, be able to directly interact with Brexit? And, by proxy, if we were to be able to identify with them and be able to interact with Britain as, our so-called motherland, you know, uh, would we be able to then establish tariffs under a potential second term from Trump that could strengthen our ties with Britain and also put the European Union in its place when it comes to affecting free speech? Could we actually create ripples that could, potentially shift the current in the situation? Because again, it's really fucking crazy. Like, this shit is happening way too fast for people to be, capable of really understanding the ramifications of affecting public life like this, with a system that has no real checks and balances. I really do think that globally we need a governmental overhaul. I think the US has a lot of room to grow. I think the European Union especially has a lot of room to grow. I feel so deeply for the people of Sweden, who, by 2030, they've projected is going to be a third world country, basically from all the mass immigration and lack of assimilation. And I think even now the U.S. is kind of teetering on its, fragile little feet when it comes to being able to have the power, with the people in this time of need, when basically globally we have would-be centrist, left situation happening in the European Union, and we have a hardcore leftist situation happening in other places like Venezuela, Guatemala. Is it Guatemala? I'm not sure. Uh, the places we all know, North Korea, obviously, where the people themselves are not actually being kept at the heart of the conversation, where it's like I said earlier, like I said it as a joke, but I'm saying it seriously now. We're seeing a resurgence of the Marie Antoinette crisis. They're so disconnected from the fact that they're treating public goods as rights and rights as public goods, that everything's kind of falling apart around them while they're up there on their big seats, looking at everything with a monocle and pretending that they're actually looking at what we're saying. It's really concerning for me. It's disconcerting uh, when I think about the fact that now we are internationally being affected and forced into a position where if we were going a leftist route, we would be forced now to be a globalist economy and country in general. So there's a lot of different factors that people aren't thinking about when they make these decisions. Like you said, Trigger, this is a situation where they're really just not at all uh, looking at what's happening and looking at the sociological ramifications of that kind of legislation, especially in a parliamentary system where everybody's kind of on the same page, because everybody's basically like in the same room. And that's just happening in Canada too. What the fuck? What was it called?
Are you talking about the law Dr. Jordan B. Peterson
Yeah.
was
Section
bringing up?
something.
I forget what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about. He as a person individually made content. Again, it all ties together. He made content of his own accord because he had amassed an audience based on his own independent content that he created while he was in the process of working. He decided to voice his opinion and put his stance on the situation out into the public, and everything basically pretty much all fell to shit around him in that moment. Basically, like I don't know how to really go into it properly, but they really came at him, and I'm really really happy that he was able to get through that and really uh, remain headstrong and stick with his stance and really come into himself in that moment as an alpha male and really be able to fucking impose his his stance on his immediate vicinity. Because when that stuff happens, that network kind of collapses around you and then tries to squeeze you dry and make you into this little tiny bubble that can't really do anything but exist as the tides are moving around you. And it's the same thing happening with the internet laws now. It's like no matter what they have to do, they're going to come after the people, and it's really scary to think about it like that. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out some new ways that we can really like ensure some protection about this because it's a lot, man. I don't really know like where this is gonna go. There's a whole ass pigeon on my fence.
Damn. But nah, like I get it too,
Oh, it flew away.
because it does all fall together. Article 13 with internet censorship and the fact that the media is actively lying. And I mean, there's also the fact that in 2014, Obama passed a law or signed into law a order that basically said that the media can use propaganda on the American people. And because it was Obama who did it, and because it was worded with the phrasing that the media can use propaganda on the American people to combat enemy propaganda, people think it's okay, but it's led to what we see today with increased fake news, quote unquote, where news corporations actively lie about what's going on so that they can put a narrative to their news. And I'm not just accusing left-wing media of doing this. Fox News does this all the fucking time. They lie about stories so that they can put a right-wing perspective on it, and so that they can then put their, kind of do a right-wing whole shtick.
Yeah, dude, that's it.
But
Literally every time I bring up like
I think
CNN or
we've
whatever,
seen.
and somebody's like, "Oh, so you like Fox? Fox does the same thing." It's like, yeah, they do. I'm not saying you're wrong. Like it's a big issue. Everybody's doing it. It's disgusting.
But I think what we're seeing is the culmination of that ideology and that type of behavior when we see Avi having to release
He
the
had to cover his
actual
own
interview
ass
himself.
because a legitimate, widespread TV network or whatever decided to come to him, okay, and try to interview him and then slander him publicly and misinform everybody, trying to make him think he was some xenophobe or something. And that is honestly one of the most intellectually disgusting things I've heard in a while, because that's so dishonest. That's so dishonest as a business too.
I mean,
And
it's
that's
like what's
so
happening
sad
with
because-
Tommy Robinson.
Huh?
Tommy Robinson is
Who's that?
constantly misrepresented by the media, constantly lied about. You know what Tommy Robinson was declared an enemy of the state for?
He was declared
talked-
an enemy of the state.
He's considered, like, by many of the people in Britain to be an enemy of the state, and he's considered to be that because the media lied about him and told everyone he was this massively Islamophobic person, when all he did was release a news article acknowledging the fact that there were Muslim rape gangs kidnapping women and turning them into sex slaves, and the government and police did nothing about it because they were afraid of being called racist.
Well,
And now
of
he's
course they're
being
gonna be afraid of being
retrialed
called
again
racist.
because
That's the
he's
whole
getting
conversation these days.
involved with UKIP. He's getting involved with UKIP,
I don't even know what that is.
the UK Independence Party, which is the party championing Brexit.
Oh, okay.
It's the party that Count Dankula and Sargon of Akkad are a part of.
Ooh! Oh my god, we literally have meme lords becoming actual lords.
Yeah, meme lords are becoming actual political activists because they're more fucking honest.
My man.
They're more fucking honest than the media. Like,
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
we are getting
Dude,
to an age. We are getting to an age where people are going to meme lords for their news because the meme lords are more truthful than the fucking state and private sponsored news networks. And that's crazy.
Oh shit, I've been wheezing for like oh shit.
Well, on that note, we have overextended our visa.
Yes.
So,
Oh.
see what I did there? Let's see y'all next week. It's been a pleasure talking.
Oh.
And for that one fan, although I think the last couple episodes have been getting like 5 consistent views.
Oh, okay.
We've been getting like 5 consistent views, but I'm gonna continue on with like that one guy. We fucking love you, man.
I love you.
See you next week, brother.
Bye.